All right, as we enter the next part of this masterclass, can address the variables we can control. These are the decisions you will make regarding various military benefits and what you're doing to ensure your income produces potential. So that's the big idea, is using life insurance to replace income. And so the place to start there is where we have all those questions around your military benefits. See, we like to think of it as these are features of having served in the military, not necessarily beneficial to everyone. They are available to everyone. That's the benefit. How they work are just features. Whether or not those features are relevant to you is the main question. We know this about the government life insurance. It's a fixed cost, same price for everybody. We have limited benefit, as in you only can get so much SGLI or VGLI. And SBP is a function of your pension. It's up to 55% for a cost of 6.5%. But again, it's available for you. So are these beneficial, or would it be more beneficial for you based on your health and your financial situation to privatize? Now, quickly understanding, well, how does the VGLI and SGLI and SBP actually work? Like, where is the insurance held? Well, when you are paying for SGLI, it's coming right out of your LES. And that's actually going, to some extent, into Prudential, who is managing the reinsurance pool of all the carriers who are essentially taking some of the risk off the table for these programs. Since they're group life insurance policies, anybody that pays for them and passes away, there would be a death benefit. So Prudential can't handle all that, and the government doesn't necessarily have their own life insurance company. So it's essentially a contract, just like a lot of DoD programs. SBP, though, is a part of the military budget. Since it's just a function of how much they're going to pay you anyways, then the cost, 6.5%, is deducted. Now, ironically, it's also subsidized. So in my mind, if you don't take SBP, I'm wondering, should you get that subsidy as well? But that's not the way it works, of course. VGLI, real quick, if you aren't aware, you can get up to $500,000 coverage now. You can go right onto the Prudential VGLI website and play with the calculator, but it's pretty straightforward. Just based on your age, everybody pays the same price. As you can see, as you get older, it becomes cost prohibitive. I mean, who at age 70 is going to be able to continue to pay $1,100 a month to maintain a $500,000 death benefit? Then they lose coverage and they lose all the money they just paid in. Adding that up, just depending on when you would start, it's not insignificant money. It's tens of thousands of dollars potentially, and then you're in your 70s and now you got to stop. That doesn't help. And then when it comes to the SBP, the question that gets Googled the most, and why people tend to find my videos and website, they say, hey, is SBP worth the cost? But that's a budget question. And sure, we obviously want to make sure we understand our budget and cash flow, but that's actually the easy answer. We know the math, 6.5%, 55%. The better question to ask is, what is the SBP worth as an asset? That's a value question. That's what you've earned. You've earned the right to use SBP because you've earned your pension. So we know, it's right in the word, the plan is there's only a benefit if there's a survivor, SBP. The only outcome where any money gets returned is when the service member or the veteran predeceases the spouse. If you pass away earlier on and still have young kids, as the child benefit SBP, but that only lasts for a certain time. The only one who can benefit is the spouse, the survivor. In our scenario with Colonel Norman here, when you extrapolate the 30-year cost of SBP, 6.5%, add the COLA adjustment to keep up with inflation, and he doesn't pass away, he'll be committed for about $330,000, plus or minus. Of course, this is using the DoD calculators. He can make it all the way to the end of those 30 years, pass away the next day. The spouse is only going to collect $5,500 a month. Now that'll be adjusted for inflation as well, but in today's dollars, that's the amount. So the question we look at is, well, how long would it take for the spouse to survive to collect the money they put into it? It's between 3.5 to 5 years on average that the spouse would have to survive. So it's like, okay, that's a likely scenario. And it seems like a good enough deal, but that's not the full value of the SBP. Full value is based on what was the present value of your pension. Now, if you're like Colonel Norm here, 30-year 06 retirement pay, collecting over $100,000 a year just from his military pension, right on the DoD retirement calculator, it shows you what the present value, $3 million or more, just depending on what COLA adjustment you use. As a lump sum, if we're using the rule of thumb 4% withdrawal rate, then he'd have to have at least $3 million in a bank account to be able to withdraw that type of income today, like the day you retire from the military. Your time in service, those 30 years of service, essentially are worth this lump sum dollar. Now, you don't get it that way, of course, but if we want to protect from a death benefit standpoint, the full value of the pension, it's actually closer to this number. And then if we want to replace or protect just the equivalent of what SBP was, well, it's 55% of that. As we discuss these decisions, Think about return on investment. In this scenario, we only get a return on investment if the retiree passes away and the spouse survives. Return on premium is essentially that $300,000, that 30-year payment that goes to SBP as long as you're living, collecting your pension. And then return on value is that 1.65 million, roughly the full value of the SBP. So what would it take to get these three things back? Well, using the DoD Department of the Actuary calculator for SBP, it shows us there's a 74% chance that the spouse will receive at least 1 month benefit. That's not 100%, even to get just 1 month. That's assuming the ages are about the same, 50 years old. Really, the better way to look at this decision is based on probabilities. In the private marketplace, you can set up life insurance where you have 100% probability you're going to get some money back or somebody will get something back, living or dead. That's the whole point. SBP, we only get the money back if the scenario the spouse survives the retiree. So what are those probabilities based on age date and the actuarial data from every retiree and their spouse who has ever died, because they know exactly what pensions get paid out, what SBP payments get paid out. You can even look it up in the DoD budget online. Even getting roughly the money back, close to $300,000, better than 50% chance. Usually that seems pretty good. But really the number that we think is more valuable is getting the full value of what the SBP is worth. And so it would take about 20 to 30 years of the spouse surviving the retiree for that scenario to play out, for the spouse to draw that much income. So people come to us because they just don't like these odds. And they start looking at those numbers down there and say, all right, it's a decent chunk of change, maybe not life-changing, but I'd rather have that working for me. Again, that's our argument. Hey, more kernels, just kernels alone captured that 300,000 plus or minus. That's a lot of money working amongst veterans. They're going to support veteran businesses and so on. So I mentioned the DoD calculators a few times. Here's all of them you'd want to go through to address everything that we talk about on this masterclass. Now, I'm not going to even take you to these websites. I've built my own calculator, but I've extrapolated from these websites. Basically, you can do it yourself. Go download the spreadsheets, figure out how to interpret them, and you'll be able to make these decisions pretty easy. You got to know a bunch of inputs, obviously, what's going on with the individual or your situation. And what I've done is I've just taken the DoD calculators for SBP, put them into one dashboard to make it more accessible to read and utilize. And if you download the book, don't forget your war chest. I send you in an email access to the spreadsheet where you can download it and play with it yourself. Got a video in there on how to use it and everything.